Welcome back to another edition of the Northport Newsbreak. I'm Jason Bartolone. Today we are joined by Jeremy Rogus. Jeremy is an arborist with our Natural Resources Division, and we are going to chat a little bit about endangered species here in Northport. Jeremy, thanks for being here with us.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure.
All right, so Jeremy, what are some of the endangered or threatened species that we have here in Northport?
Well, there's several. So when you think about species that are protected, there's several different classifications. But they're all protected. You know, there's endangered, there's threatened, there's listed species, which covers, there's lists in the federal side and on the state side, but they're all protected, right?
Right.
So there's several. We have a bonneted bat, tricolored bat. We have, of course, our gopher tortoise, which we take a lot of pride in here in Northport.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that everybody has awareness of. We have the bald eagle, and of course, you know, we're not right on the coast here in Northport, but we do have a lot of water. We do have a tidal water, and we do have manatees because of that.
Sure.
So those are probably the biggest ones. And of course the scrub jay. We do have a scrub jay population here.
Can't forget the scrub jay.
Right,
yes.
right, yes.
So what are the strategies that you and your team implement to help protect those species and keep them safe here in Northport?
Right. So development occurs, and so we want to, of course, respect and protect these listed protected species, obviously for all the reasons. They are innocent creatures, and they live here amongst us, and we take a lot of pride and ownership, and we are tasked with making sure those are protected and respected, and not, you know, victimized, I guess. So one of the things we do, like, for example, each one is a little different as far as the policy that we take in order to do the protection. For example, gopher tortoises. So when somebody comes in with an application to develop a property, one of the first things we do, we're the boots on the ground. We go out there before anything happens, and we identify the habitat, what could potentially be there. We find any gopher tortoise burrows that could be there, and then we don't issue any permit. If we find anything, no permits are issued until the applicant, the property owner, the builder, goes through the appropriate steps in order to comply with all the regulations as far as what they need to do to protect or relocate or whatever it may be with that gopher tortoise in order to make sure it's safe and not harmed.
So that's kind of all included in our development regulations as people are developing. Are there other laws, I mean state laws, I guess, different laws that apply, regulations for species?
So the Northport specifically, the language in the code, it's pretty vague. It's just, you know, it's not a step-by-step on here's what you do. It's just protect. You know, you got to protect. And then we take that a step further, and we comply with all the state guidelines. So we're looking at all the state guidelines as far as, for example, gopher tortoises, what needs to be done in order for protection of gopher tortoises, so that we have, you know, we can show that you know, everything is done properly here in Northport. And I'll give you an example as far as gopher tortoises go. If you look at the map, you go to the Florida Department of Wildlife, they issue the permits for relocations and on-site relocations of gopher tortoises. And if you can look at the map of where the permits are, and it's really interesting, if you just look at Southwest Florida, it'll show 400 and some permits issued in the last couple of years in Northport. And you look at everywhere around, and the numbers are less than 100, less than 50.
Wow.
So if that shows you, that demonstrates to you what we do here as far as making sure that these things are protected and all these permits are getting pulled. I'm not saying that these other jurisdictions aren't doing what they're supposed to do, but I don't know. But if you look at those numbers, you know, it demonstrates what we do here in Northport.
Right. So it's not just you guys. I know Natural Resources is still a pretty new team to the city here, just in the last year that we've created. But obviously, you're working with other people at the city and maybe even outside groups or agencies. Who are the people and groups that you collaborate with when it comes to endangered species and helping protect them?
Right. Of course, there's a state agency, like I mentioned, Florida Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, FWC, Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission. Those people are on speed dial. I mean, if there's anything, those are the guys with the vests and the badges, you know. So and girls, of course, that come out and assist us if there's any other issue, you know, that we can't handle, anything going on that doesn't seem right, you know. They're just one step away. So we work with them, and there's other those are, of course, a state agency. We do work with the federal, on the federal side, Federal Fish and Wildlife, out of their office in Vero Beach, Florida. So they come in on the scrub jay side. So the scrub jay is a federally listed endangered species that we have here in Northport. And so we work closely with them when development is involved in a scrub jay area. So of course, those are the federal and state agencies. And then there's also groups, conservation groups such as the National Wildlife Federation. We've worked with them as far as some manatee work. For example, there's the creek that comes out of Warm Mineral Springs,
Right.
and it flows down into the Mayaca River. Well, that creek, that's really that's Northport water, so we're kind of responsible for it, right? It's a tidal creek, and manatees do go up into that creek. And there was a project 2 years ago they dredged out some of that creek bottom to give the manatees some more room, some more depth to come further upstream, because it's warm water, so they do come up there in the wintertime.
Sure.
Because it's always a consistent temperature, right?
Right.
No matter what time of year.
Just like the springs, yes.
Right, just like the springs. So we worked with National Wildlife Federation. They did post signs to identify areas where public interfaces with that creek. And there's, of course, houses all along the creek. But there are lots of vacant areas where people do use the creek, for recreation, kayaking, and that sort of thing. And so we want to put up signs that, don't enter the creek, don't disturb. The manatees are in there, they're resting, they have young manatees and babies, and so they're sleeping, and they're, so you don't want to go in the creek, you don't want to use the creek when they're in there using it in the wintertime. That's their spot.
Sure.
And
so don't ride the manatees either. I
Right.
remember somebody did that once. Do not ride the manatees either.
No.
So you mentioned it a little bit about development and obviously the growth that we have here in Northport. Is that one of the biggest challenges, or what are the other challenges when it comes to conservation and endangered species in Northport?
Just aware. Of course, we want awareness. So there's that aspect of what we do, not only during development. Like you said, we want to make sure every rule is followed during development, but just have awareness, public awareness, and outreach and education, so that people know what they live here and where they're amongst us, right? So that's a big thing, and what to do if you see a gopher tortoise and in the road and that sort of thing. So that's I wouldn't say a challenge, but it's something else that must be done and has to be done, and we do. That's just doing those kind of activities.
Knowledge is power, right?
Knowledge
So
is
the
power.
more people know
Right.
what to look out for and how to protect their role in it.
Yeah.
What role does the public play in shaping how we conserve our strategies? I think you mentioned before, people can look up, is there an app or something like that where people can look up species and report what they see when it's gopher tortoises or whatever?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So on the city website, there was one of our GIS employees several years years ago, he put together a kind of an app where you can pin the location of wildlife that you see, and then make a little description of what it was, where it was, and drop a pin, really. And so that's useful. It's mainly useful for awareness. That's kind of like it's a nice thing to do for the public, right? And we can also use it when we're looking. Like I said in the beginning, we're boots on the ground. So we would never rely, in order to issue a permit, let's say, we wouldn't just look at that and say, okay, it's fine. Nobody's put a pin here on this lot, let's go ahead and build there. We're going out and doing a proper survey according to, state guidelines, doing, what they call transects. And we're walking every 10 meters apart in a zigzag pattern of the whole lot, so that we can know exactly what's there and we're not missing anything. As far as gopher, tortoise burrows, woodpecker nests, anything like that. Yeah. So any bird nest. And that's another thing. And we mentioned, what's protected here in Northport. Any bird is on the Migratory Bird Act on the federal level. All our wonderful birds that we have here in Northport, and white ibises and egrets and herons, and that everybody has in their front yard and their swale. All these things are protected.
Right.
And then we have our raptors, and we have a swallow-tailed kite, of course. If you see the emblem for the Florida Wildlife Commission, their bird on the emblem is the swallow-tailed kite. And we have so many of them here in Northport, and people don't realize that they're just beautiful birds that fly around in the summer. They come all the way from Brazil and Argentina, across the ocean.
Wow.
And they end up here in Sarasota County as one of the main places, really. And they're just awesome.
They're just like everybody that lives here, right?
Yeah.
They all came from around the world to live in paradise.
Right, and they go back during the winter.
Yeah,
and
there are snowbirds, literally.
Back and forth, right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Okay, so if people want to learn more, I know you guys have been very active with educating people, coming out to speak at different events and holding your listening tours. We've even seen the turtle signs that your team has available. So if people see signs, see turtle nests and they want signs to have more awareness, how do they reach out to you? How can they contact you and the Natural Resources team?
So the best and easiest way is probably the email address. So naturalresources@northportfl.gov, right? And then, of course, we're all accessible via our contact list, which is on the website. So we have 2 arborists, we have 2 environmental specialists, we have now an urban forester, and of course our natural resources manager. So at any time, there's somebody going to be here in the office that, even without a phone call, you stop in and you have a question, we're available for sure.
That's great. You guys are a great resource for people, and we're excited to have you here at the city to have that connection with people. So you heard it here, northportfl.gov. You can look up the Natural Resources Division, find all that contact information, and get in touch with Jeremy and the rest of the team with any concerns or questions that you have about the environment and the role you play. So, Jeremy, really appreciate you doing this. Thanks for educating us about endangered species. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
And thank you for listening. We'll catch you again on another edition of Northport Newsbreak.